Bhaktya vihina aparada lakshay Shiptascha karmaritaram gamadye Kripa maitvam sharanam prabhana Vrinde namaste charanaravinda Bhajami radam aravinda netram Smarami radam madhurashmitasyam Vadami radam karunavaradam Tato mamanasti gatyena chapi. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dhamma pranams unto the lotus feet of my beloved Gurudev, Nitya Leela, Pravishta Om, Astautas Rashishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Tridandi Swami Maharaj. And the same again, millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Leela, Pravishta Om, Astautas Rashishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So yesterday we completed our study of Sri Siksastakam, and I'm sure you've all got an idea of the thread of the build-up to the final conclusion of prema through all the different stages in bhakti. We didn't speak so much about the pastimes pertaining to the particular time of the day in relationship to the stages of bhakti. Actually, I think that the stages of bhakti and the principal times of the day are always present in the mind of the Jatarati Sadhak. If that Jatarati Sadhak is meditating in the different time frames of the day, he can be moving through the different pastime yamas of the day. But also because we didn't understand this point, or I didn't understand this point, but we should understand that the Jatarati Sadhak, he can, while he's taking his naam, he can be meditating on so many different pastimes, this Swarasika Upasana, this different pastimes during the day. It's described that this Mantramayi Upasana is just meditating on one pastime. And this is described in the Vajanahasya, or the Ragvatman Chandrika also, as usually a stage in Vaidimag, when we're just meditating on one particular pastime. But in Raganuga, we can develop the ability to move through those particular pastimes. So today, I wanted to discuss one tattva that we didn't discuss as we were going through. Oh, okay. I thought that was my voice coming out. Okay, so this advaya gyan paratattva, that there is nothing in existence that is separate from Krishna. It's a very simple truth, actually. It's not at all complex. It's actually like ABC. It's not a difficult tattva to grasp. So this advaya, ad means, it's the opposite of dvaya. Dvaya means two. So advaya means one. So this one principle knowledge about Krishna. What is the absolute truth about Krishna? So when Vedavyas was compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam, he had a desire to write all these verses down. So he engaged his dear friend Ganeshji, and Ganesh agreed to write the 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. But he made a condition to Vyasadeva. He said, as long as you keep speaking, my pen will keep writing. But if you stop speaking, my pen stops. So Vedavyas said, okay, no problem. 18,000 verses. They were just on the tip of his tongue. But then he made a condition to Ganeshji. He said, I am making a condition also that you must understand all of what I'm saying. You have to comprehend it. So Ganeshji, he thought, oh yes, no problem. So he said, okay. Now, right at the very, very beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 2nd chapter, 11th verse, it comes to one very, very, very important verse. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmati paramatmati bhagavan iti shabhyate. This is such an important verse. I can remember when I first was in the Mati in 1994, and Gurudev, he asked me if I knew this verse. And I said, oh yes, Gurudev, I know that verse. All I knew was a bit of the last part of it. So then he said to me, right, say it. And I didn't know it. So I had to go and learn it, and that night he asked me again, now say the verse. But from the very beginning, he wanted us to know this particular verse. It's a pivotal verse. It's so good to have this verse when you're speaking with Mayavads, or you're speaking, like when I'm in Istanbul with the Muslims. It's a very handy verse to have. It's very important. How come the Supreme Absolute is one, but he's three? So this is where Ganesh, he stumbled, and he was thinking so hard about how can this be that the absolute reality is one, but it's three. Brahmati, Paramatmati, and Bhagavan. There is the Brahman, there is Paramatma, and Bhagavan. How can they all three simultaneously be the absolute reality? So he was thinking and concentrating so hard to try and figure this out that his pen broke. And that's when he breaks off his tusk. You always see Ganesh, he's only got half a tusk. He breaks off his tusk and he finishes the Bhagavatam with his tusk and some ink. But he was completely dumbfounded by this verse. So this verse, Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattva, it's called Vyasa Kuta. Kuta means puzzle. So it created a puzzle for the listener. So it needs to be explained. And if you read that Morning Walks book from not the new one, but the other one, that's 2009, right? 2009. Correct? So if you read that, there's probably about 4 or 5 explanations of this advaya gyan paratattva in there, right at the very beginning. And Gurudev, he asked, first of all, I think it's Padmanabha Maharaj, you explain it. Then he asked somebody else. Then finally, Shamrani, you explain it. Then he explained it himself. So you're getting like 4 angles of the one jewel being explained in different ways. Gurudev is just reconciling everything. So it's very important because it includes everything in existence. Fundamentally, there is the Brahman, and many endeavor to achieve that Brahman. But this oneness, we should understand, is like the oneness of the sun. When we say, oh, the sun is in the sky, that also includes the effulgence, the heat, the rays, etc. It also includes the sun globe, and it also includes Surya Dev, that master of the sun, that king of the sun planet. So all three are embodied when you say the sun. That's one example. And then another beautiful example is given of a hill. If you see a green hill in the distance, it looks just like a round green top. But if you get a little bit closer, you can see that it's got trees and bushes, etc. And if you get closer still, you see it have little living entities and animals there on the hill. So it's 3 different visions of the one truth, and they've been described in different ways. And men try to achieve different aspects of this one truth, and they are given different names. It's like the Jnani. He wants to achieve the effulgence of Krishna, just singularly. This is where he thinks this is the absolute reality. Because often when you hear about or read about near-death experiences. For most people, they talk about going towards the light. So many descriptions are given of this. People whose heartbeat has stopped in a hospital or something, for a matter of minutes, sometimes 3 or 4 or even 5 minutes, and they've actually left their bodies. There's hundreds and thousands of descriptions of this. But they all have the same experience. They're all going towards the light. And someone with knowledge will know that this light is not the whole truth. He will understand this is like we will understand if we go through an experience like that. We will appreciate this light these descriptions have described is like a very warm, loving, friendly. It's like the materialist conception of heaven. So of course they're all immediately attracted to the light. They're attracted to Krishna's effulgence. The light is Krishna's effulgence. Now, who remembers from the other day when I described the qualities embodied within the effulgence? Remember, Krishna has 6 qualities. Do you remember?
Beauty.
Huh?
Beauty.
No. Tell me the 2 qualities in the Brahmajyoti.
Knowledge and renunciation.
Yes. Good student. Very good. Knowledge and renunciation. Look, I have a map here. You can copy it or something. So, it's very simple. But it shows the 6 qualities of Krishna. This body of the tree, it's called the Angi, and its beauty. Remember, I explained this the other day. The first thing you think about when you think about Krishna is his extreme, extraordinary, astonishing beauty. That's such a personal aspect of Krishna's nature. It is Krishna's nature. He's called Lavanamrita. He's the embodiment of all beauty. All beauty is coming from Krishna. Everything beautiful in existence comes from him. So his first, most prominent quality is his beauty. Then the second is strength, and then fame and opulence. So these are secondary to the beauty. They're called the angas, or limbs, like the limbs of this picture of the tree. So they're limbs of his qualities, but they're directly connected to the principle of beauty. They're connected directly to Krishna. And I described the other day, you can't have something that is famous without having an object that is famous. You can't have something that is strong without having an object that is strong. You can't have something that is opulent without having an object that is opulent. This word opulence is actually wrong. In Sanskrit it's vibhuti. Vibhuti means the owner of those opulences. So Krishna owns all the opulences in existence. Now from this quality of fame comes an effulgence. Like if you walk in the street and you see Barack Obama walking down the street, he's very famous. He will have a particular effulgence about him. That's what famous people, that's what happens. They have a particular aura, they have something bright about them. Everyone is looking at them all the time. Or we can think of Gurudev, much better. He's the most famous. So his brilliance, his effulgence, it's always there. So that fame. Now the light from that fame, the effulgence of that fame, are these 2 other qualities of Krishna, this knowledge and renunciation. So I described the other day how knowledge itself, by itself, it can exist by itself. You can find it in a library, you can find it in a book. It doesn't have to be personalized like the other qualities. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's called these qualities, these 2 attributes of qualities. They're not direct qualities, they're attributes of qualities. This is the quality of knowledge and the quality of renunciation. These are attributes of qualities, not direct qualities like these other. They're not connecting in the same way to the angi, to the trunk of the tree. And this quality of renunciation is a negative quality. So now these two qualities of jnana and vairagya, or knowledge and renunciation, they embody the effulgence of Krishna. That's the, you can pass that around if you want. That's the substance of the Brahmajyoti. It's made up of knowledge and renunciation. So the jnanis who are struggling to attain this effulgence, they're called jnanis because they want to absorb knowledge so that they can attain this state of consciousness. And that state of consciousness within the Brahmajyoti only has the singular quality of chit, shakti. It doesn't have any existence. There's no existence there. It's just chit. And I know that quite often devotees get confused on this point. They think Sat, Chit, Ananda, so they think the first of these three, this Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan, the first should be Sat. No, it's Chit. So we've got in the map here, we've got Sat, Chit, Ananda going across the top. On this side, Baladev Prabhu, it's the blue color, is the Sat, existence potency. I describe another name for Sat. Who can tell me? Sat, Sandini. Sandini and Sat, totally the same. Just interchangeable names. They just made them different to confuse everybody. But there is some difference there. So
this that we call qualities, also Srila Prabhupada in his books, he calls another name.
Opulences. Yes.
Yeah.
Bhagavan. Bhagavan. This means that person who is filled to the maximum with the greatest opulences. So you can call them opulences, or you can. Usually we refer to them as qualities.
But
That's.
there was another book somewhere that it says Krishna's qualities are about 19 or 20. And
Oh, Krishna has individual, personal qualities. These are his principal qualities. When we say the name Bhagavan, these are the 6 qualities that are spoken about, that we've described. This make him Bhagavan. The other qualities enhance these 6. These are the 6 principal. His beauty, for example. Then what is his beauty? He's the most tolerant, he's the most merciful. All these other 19 qualities fan out from that one particular quality. But in principle, this beauty is the main angi of Krishna. So what we're trying to understand today is the workings of Krishna's energies. This advaya, that Krishna is only one, that everything in existence is connected to Krishna. There's nothing in existence separate from Krishna. This is what this advaya gyan paratattva means. Para means topmost truth. This singular advaya gyan, singular knowledge of the topmost truth, paratattva. If we know this knowledge, you can never fall down. You can never be distracted. It's not possible. If you understand this, it doesn't take a lot of brain power to understand it. It takes some focus, for a few hours more or less, just trying to understand the terminologies and how they relate to each other. So we have these 3 principal energies: Sat, Sandini, Chit, Samvit, and then Ananda, Hladini. So these 3 principal Shaktis coming from Swarup Shakti. And this existence potency, the Ishtadev is Baladev Prabhu of the Sat Shakti. And the Ishtadev of Chit is Sri Krishna himself. And the Ishtadev of Ananda, yes, it's all there. I have another map, more simple. You don't have to struggle with it. You can pass it. This map that I'm passing around here, it shows how these 3 Shaktis act on the Jiva and how they act within Maya, the external energy. And it's defined in 3 divisions. It's very clear on that map. And this is in principle what is this meaning of advaya, gyan, paratattva. So, it's the yogis who focus on the Brahmajyoti. They focus on the Brahman feature of the Lord. Did I say yogis or gyanis? Oh, sorry. Gyanis. It is the gyanis who focus on the Brahmajyoti. Also, many religionists focus on the Brahmajyoti. If you talk, like there's one famous, you can say mystic Christian, his name's Thomas Merton. And there are many of them. And their ultimate understanding of God, it's very, very beautiful. But their final conception of that person is that it's some energetic light. And they connect with that. And they have a mystical experience in that light. These are called Brahmavads. They believe in a supreme, but they don't give him a personal form. A Brahmavad will believe in the supernatural energy with the power. So many in the world believe in this. So now what is the difference between a Brahmavad and a Mayavad? Maya, they believe they ultimately are that supreme. That is what a Mayavad is. A Brahmavad are actually like originally Sukadeva Goswami is described as acting like a Brahmavad. Also the 4 Kumaras, they were acting in that way also. They knew there was an absolute supreme. They didn't know who or what it was. They were just aware of its potency and power. So they were giving it a name of God, like the all-pervasive God. So this is often the mentality or consciousness within religions, is that they give the name God. The name God doesn't actually have a form, doesn't have, relatives or relationships, or doesn't have anything. It's just the God. And this is often the case, like in Islam. The word Allah, it means powerful, or it means light. And they don't define, even though in the Quran, he's described as having so many qualities. Merciful, compassion, all qualities like this. But they don't put a form to him. In fact, they condemn you if you have any form representing God. Even if you travel on Saudi Arabian Airlines, for example, they have absolutely no decoration at all. If you live in Saudi Arabia or one of these heavy Muslim countries, they have no object of their worship. Actually, in Mecca, their principal place of worship, they have like a building, 4 arches on both sides, like a what do you call it, samadhi. And inside there is a small black box. And inside that black box is a Shiva lingam, actually. And that's what they worship. They go around like that. Yeah, they go the other way, right. Everything in Muslim Islam is the opposite. Gurudev often jokes. Gurudev doesn't have an affinity with Muslims at all, because he remembers the heaviness that they treated the Vaishnavas, in Aurangzeb's time, murdering millions, thousands of Vaishnavas. They had a bounty on the number of Brahmin threads they would bring. Just horrific, smashing the temples down. Radha Govindaji, that Haridev temple in Govardhan, was smashed down by Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb was like full demon. When he was very young, as a young boy, he came to his father and told his father, Akbar, he said, I want to be king. And his father said, but you have 5 brothers who are all older than you. So that evening he brought a tray into his father. His father took the cover off, and there were the 5 heads of his brothers on the tray. So this was the beginning of Aurangzeb. Quite a demon. Anyway, so what he inflicted on the Vaishnavas, I often feel that Gurudev, he forgives everything, but this is hard to forgive. Because he would joke many times, the Muslims, they don't have a moustache, whereas the Hindus, they have a moustache. They have everything back to front. They walk around the wrong way. you know, all kinds of things.
And when we make rotis, I mean, when they make rotis, the skillet is upside down. Ours is this and this is like
Really?
that. Yes.
Many things. But when I'm in those countries and they have this impersonal conception, that is the pinnacle of their understanding of God. And most religions, Christianity in particular, if you read, like, for example, in Islam, there are two sects. There are the fundamentalists and there are the Sufis. The Sufis, yeah, they're connected. But you have like the mystical practitioners and you have the regulative people. And in the Christian church, you also have the same. You have the regular attendance towards all the details and so on, and then you have the Christian mystics. And their ultimate beliefs in both of these groups is that God exists, yes, because they're called a religion, so God exists. But they don't give a form at all. It's like when we first became devotees, probably for many of us, to accept a form of God was a huge step in our progress of awareness of what is the Supreme, just accepting a form of God. But it's really completely logical, because what I tell them when I'm in Istanbul, for example, we always get a very good crowd of interesting, you know, lawyers, doctors, all kinds of professional type people. And we get whole halls filled with them. And I tell them that the word Allah, one of the meanings of Allah is light. So I ask them, do you have any experience of any light that does not have a source to it? Is there such a thing as a body of light without a source? Is there? No? You cannot have light without a source. There must be an object, like the sun, like a candle, like a light. Anything. It all has an object. You can't just get light. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing. So these people in their near-death experiences, if they had understanding of this, they are understanding something. They're being bathed in the light of the Brahmajyoti. They are receiving something of Krishna's illumination, his effulgence. But they haven't ever heard that to inquire, well, what is the source of this light? What is the object behind? So when I speak like this, they become very astonished, really astonished, because logically you don't get light without a source. So they've never sort of considered that. So then I begin slowly to try and establish the personal form of the Lord. And it's through this tattva of advaya, jnana, paratattva that it establishes very clearly. That's why it's such an important truth to try and understand carefully. It establishes the personal form of the Lord, but he's in three forms. As I said before, Ganeshji, with his great intelligence, could not appreciate this. He broke his pen in puzzlement. So the first form is the Brahmajyoti, and those who aspire for that are called Jnanis. But as I've just described, these are also different sorts of religionists. Different sorts of religionists, they tried to attain that mystical wonderland, that place of light. And now beyond there is educated person who understands that actually Supersoul exists in the heart of all. Many followers of spiritual life, they just think that I have a soul, but they don't connect that soul with the Supreme. But the followers of Vedanta, we understand that there is a Supreme Soul within every body. There is the Jivatma and there is the Paramatma. Para means topmost, so you have the Jivatma, the infinitesimal Jiva, and you have the Paramatma within the body of all creatures, all living entities. They all have Supersoul because they're connected directly to the Supreme. So this energy of Paramatma, those who aspire for that state of consciousness, to be aware of everyone else's Supersoul, to be aware of the embodiment of Supersoul himself, they're called yogis. the yogis aspire for that place of consciousness. And in that state of consciousness, because they're giving the conception of God a form, Paramatma, he has a form, therefore he has existence. Therefore, the two Shaktis that are present when the yogis reach their highest conception is Sat and Chit. They have two. They have Sat because Supersoul, Paramatma, has existence, whereas the Brahmajyoti doesn't have any existence. It's just a light. So we're progressing, we're trying to understand these three Shaktis, these three principal Shaktis that diffuse their potencies throughout the world, throughout all the worlds. They're acting throughout all the worlds. I just sent that diagram around, and it shows how these three Shaktis are acting within Maya, and it shows how they're acting on the Jiva. So all of this combined, all of this truth is to highlight the personal form of the Lord, because the final conclusion of God, or that power, is his personal form, Bhagavan, who is filled with these six opulences. So we have Brahmati, Paramatmati, Bhagavan, Iti Shabhyate. This is what this verse is saying.
What are the yogis trying to attain?
They're trying to attain Paramatma. And this Paramatma was also what the residents of Satya Yuga, their meditation in Satya Yuga was also on Paramatma. They were like yogis. You see paintings in the different books of the yogi meditating on Supersoul in the heart. They were also avatars present in Satya Yuga, but they were very much of an Aishwarya type.
But what would they become? How can you become Paramatma?
There's a place just underneath Shivji's abode, and it's called Siddhaloka. If you perfect the siddhas, the mystic siddhas in your heart through the yogic practices, you can perfect these siddhis to such a high degree, and you can recognize the Supersoul within you. And if you have achieved that end, your destination will be across the Brahmajyoti, because it's higher than the Brahmajyoti. I said before, the Brahmajyoti only has one principal Shakti. The yogis are seeing two Shaktis because they're giving the Lord a form. They're giving him existence. So it's Sat. So those yogis, they come to this Siddhaloka, which is the very lowest stage in the spiritual realm. It's across the Viraja river. It's across this river of desire, you can say. They have no more desire for material pleasures or anything of this world. If you meet a mystic yogi, he's a very, very powerful person. There's no question. He's attained great potency by his practice. And he can do with these different cities all kinds of, remarkable things. And India is full of these kind of people. Never ever disrespect these individuals. They are practicing for so many lifetimes to attain these cities. But it's not the highest conception. No one in the world should be disrespected. Huh? In many cases, yes. There's one story of one yogi who describes in his whole book, it's called The Blue Pearl. Maybe some of you read it at one point. Before I became a devotee, I read it. It's by Swami Muktananda. And he was a great yogi, and he went right through all these yogic processes. And at the very height or depth of his meditation, he sees a blue pearl. And inside the blue pearl, he sees a little boy playing a flute. And he thinks, oh, that's me. Back down. So this is a Mayavad. Ultimately, his practice turned to a Mayavad conception, totally. Because he thought that he was the center. Even yogis have a very self-centered nature very often, because they've developed all this tremendous potency in themselves, so they start to think that they have the power. But the real yogi knows where the power is coming from. He knows that it's coming from the Supreme Lord. So those yogis who go to Siddhaloka, they have either had darshan or they understand that that Supreme Lord of the heart is a personality separate to themselves. We discussed just for a second yesterday, we were reading about Ahangropasana in the Siksastakam commentary of Gurudev. This Ahangropasana means that I'm thinking all the time that I am that power that is creating these wonderful feelings. If I'm feeling very beautiful, then I'm thinking, oh, that's because actually I'm God. It's ultimately a Mayavad conception, and it can be called Ahangropasana. Ahangro means the aham, I, upasana. Upasana is worship. I'm ultimately worshipping myself. If I'm seeing something very beautiful, I'm seeing a beautiful flower, I'm just astonished. And then I suddenly think, oh, but this is looking so beautiful because it's a reflection from my beautiful mind. That's why it's looking so beautiful. You understand?
Yeah. Before you say that Paramatma has a form, you said.
Yes.
So if they are meditating on that form, Paramatma,
That's a very subtle form, yes.
why couldn't they have darshan of that form?
Yes, they can have darshan of that form, but that form doesn't have the qualities of Bhagavan. That form actually, ultimately, is only temporary. That form of Paramatma is not eternal. Paramatma is like the Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. There are three Vishnus. There is Mahavishnu, or Karanadakshayi Vishnu, in the Viraja river, right? The huge personality. He's lying there, and from his body is emanating all the unlimited billions of universes through the pores of his skin. And then another expansion of Vishnu enters into each universe as Garbhadakshayi Vishnu. And then he lies down within that ocean. I'm just about to explain. I'm explaining. Hold on. I'm very eager. It's good quality. Wait a minute, let me finish. If I don't explain it slowly, you're not going to understand it. I'm going to have to do it again. So I'm trying to be in the mode of goodness and just do it once, first time properly. So, Garbhadakshayi Vishnu is the second Vishnu expansion. And from the navel of Garbhadakshayi Vishnu comes the lotus. And on the lotus is the self-manifest Lord Brahma. And then Lord Brahma creates, he's the architect of this universe. He creates the universes, or this universe, right? And then Kshirodakshayi Vishnu is the third expansion of Vishnu. He enters as the supersoul into every single living entity. So we see from this example how much does Krishna love us. We were talking yesterday about how much he loved us. He loves us this much. But he's manifested himself in three different aspects just to be within our hearts. So,
the form would be like that form, Kshirodakshayi. The Paramatma form would be like Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. It would look like that.
Kshirodakshayi Vishnu looks like the Paramatma with four arms, conch, disc, club, flower, padma, etc. That's what it looks like. So that form of Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, when Karanadakshayi Vishnu, Mahavishnu, breathes in again at the end of Lord Brahma's life, all those universes are again within the body of Mahavishnu. So where is Kshirodakshayi Vishnu at that time? Kshirodakshayi Vishnu again has become part of the Mahavishnu body form. And Garbhadakshayi Vishnu has also again entered into the existence of Mahavishnu. No. The Garbhadakshayi Vishnu, Mahavishnu is eternal. And these principles, Garbhadakshayi Vishnu and Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, are not eternally acting, because there comes a time, actually, when there's a moment in time when they don't exist, when Mahavishnu breathes in and all of those Vishnus are again within his body. There's no separate identity of Garbhadakshayi Vishnu. He's again become Mahavishnu. And then from Mahavishnu, again, he manifests. So in that sense, that aspect is not the eternal aspect. Just like Gurudev describes in Bhagavad Gita, you can read, I think, in the 3rd or 4th chapter. He's saying exactly what I'm saying here. He's saying that Paramatma does not have an eternal existence. And he's explaining it as I'm saying to you, that because all those souls go back into the body of Mahavishnu. So at that time, where is Paramatma? Paramatma doesn't exist then. But if the yogi has attained an understanding of that feature of the Lord, that feature of the Lord will be manifest in a different form in Siddhaloka. But it's not the same Paramatma that we talk about in this world. It is a temporary manifestation of the Lord to carry the jiva through his embodied lives in this world, and when that jiva, if he doesn't make it out of this samsara, then again the jiva with Paramatma again will go into the body like that. You should read Bhagavad Gita. I'll find the exact verses and you can read for yourself exactly how Srila Gurudev describes this. I can remember when I first heard this, I was like astounded that Paramatma is not eternal. How many times have we, heard or prior to reading? So much of our knowledge is limited. Understand, we go through and we absorb and assimilate certain amounts of knowledge according to our sukriti and our individual adhikar. But when that adhikar grows and matures, we have the capacity to understand more truths. There are much, much, much more truths than we've never heard of that one day will be imparted through realization, etc. So never think it's a mistake to think, oh yes, I did that 20 years ago and Prabhupada said like that, so that must be exactly how it is for all eternity. And it is like Prabhupada said it. But if you go deeper, you can understand more clearly what Prabhupada is saying. There's no difference at all in any of these descriptions from what Prabhupada is saying, except it's not explained sufficiently, that's all. It's only given in an abbreviated form.
Is the jiva internal in that sense also?
Yes, the jiva is different. The jiva-atma remains in his identity within the body of Karanadokshayi Vishnu. He's there in like a yoga nidra. Mahavishnu himself is like in yoga nidra. That's a deep yogic sleep. And the jiva is also affected by that deep sleep. And he also is in a suspended state of consciousness. But that jiva has still packed with all his previous karmas. Whatever he accrued in life, if it wasn't purified, and then again he goes into the body of Karanadokshayi Vishnu, he's taking all of those desires with him in infinitesimal form. So that jiva is completely because the spirit, soul, is the real swarup of the jiva. And that is eternal. That is pure spirit. Then is no longer with the jiva because the jiva's in the body of Mahavishnu. It's a very fine line, but basically Paramatma doesn't exist over the Brahmajyoti. This is the principle, actually. I mean, we can spin around here for ages, just going over it over again and again. But the basic essence is that Paramatma does not exist over the Brahmajyoti. So therefore, it's not an eternal feature of the Lord. It's a temporary manifestation to carry the suffering jivas, through their chapters of lives.
Does it mean that when we meet the pure devotee and he gives
replaces
us
the Paramatma? Yes.
That the Paramatma becomes Radha
Yes.
Krishna, or maybe any Ram Bhakta gets...
No, it's described that Paramatma becomes like Guru. Guru then is directing the wanderings of the jivas.
But then
It's like that feature. What do you say, Ram?
I've heard it explained that Gurudev comes and kicks Paramatma.
That's what I'm saying. So Gurudev replaces Paramatma's potency in the heart of the dedicated disciple who has Nishtha. He will be representing, and then when Gurudev leaves, some people say that again Paramatma jumps in. I've heard this also, that when No, well, it depends on your nishta. If your nishta, like when Gurudev is present, there's a certain particular potency that is there only when he's present, that is no longer there when he's absent. The eternal welfare of the jiva is always being taken care of by Guru, but there is a particular potency that he exhibits to the jiva, and that potency replaces, while he's present, Paramatma. But when he leaves this world, I have understood from different devotees that actually, again, Paramatma can manifest in the heart, because Paramatma is always here in this worldly plane. He doesn't leave this world the same way that Gurudev leaves the world.
What's the difference between Paramatma and Chaitya Guru?
Practically the same. I think it is the same.
It wouldn't be that he's giving Radha Krishna as
Yes, yes. This is why Paramatma can't come back in again. If Guru has established that Radha and Krishna are the Ishtadev, then he cannot come. But if that's not being fully established, then Paramatma can again manifest in the heart of the jiva. So if you've been able to absorb and assimilate that truth conclusively by the living presence of Guru, then that truth cannot be replaced because it's eternal.
Can establish this only by Diksha Mantra or by Harinam?
Say again?
Guru can establish the form of Radha Krishna within the heart by Diksha Mantra, or he at the first time established it by Harinam.
The process begins with Harinam, and Harinam is the essence, just like in the stages of praying, leading to praying. Shraddha is the essence throughout. So Harinam is the essence throughout. Now these other stages of praying will embellish that essence. They will be supportive of the essence. The principle is the Harinam, actually. But the Diksha mantras will give us full support and strength. Huh? They will establish a murti, yes, within the heart. Each of those Diksha mantras is actually in the form of a deity, and Gurudev establishes those deities within the heart.
So without Diksha Mantra, you cannot really realize the form. You need Diksha Mantra, so Diksha Mantra is really important for
That's-
spiritual advancement, right?
But ultimately, those mantras, they do not also exist over the Brahmajyoti. Those mantras that we chant to connect, they don't exist over the Viraja river, but the Hare Krishna mantra does. There is the Hare Krishna mantra in the higher realms, in Vaikuntha, in Goloka Vrindavan. The Hare Krishna mantra is there. But these Gopal mantras, etc., they come through the worlds. But we have the story of Gop Kumar. He's chanting his Gopal mantra, but when he makes his reaches the ultimate destination, that Gopal mantra is not effective, and he's reached that goal. He's embraced the Lord of his heart to his utter satisfaction. So that mantra is just like disappears.
Chanting it in Vaikuntha?
Huh?
Wasn't he still chanting it in Vaikuntha?
Yes, but he's progressing through there. He's going through there. I've heard both things. I mean, I just threw in Sripad Bhaktivedanta to confuse myself. But actually, I had heard fully previously that these mantras don't exist over the Brahmajyoti, that the Hare Krishna mantra does. Now we have the, trying to reconcile Gop Kumar's journey. So I don't know very much at all. Let me just describe advaya gyan paratattva, how I understand it. If you ask me so many questions, and Gurudev is not empowering me to give the answer, I don't know what is the answer for this. Because certainly Gurudev has said, I've heard him say, that these Diksha mantras don't go over the Brahmajyoti. Huh?
The sages, because the Hare Krishna mantra will take us all the way back, but they came with the process to speed this up.
Yeah, I heard the same thing too, yeah.
Yeah, that's chanting they give relationship, because chanting adding
Yes.
relationship,
Yes.
then Namaparad will go a lot.
Yes. This is what I said just a few minutes ago. I said exactly the same. I said the Diksha mantras are supportive. They will quickly purify. They will speed the whole process up. But it's not like I described those stages of praying. The essence of all those stages, Nishta, is Shraddha. Yes, that's the current that's running through it. So this Hare Krishna mantra is the current. And now these Diksha mantras are embellishing or supporting our stages there. Okay? Don't ask me too difficult questions. On this topic, because you know what, my friends, this topic is called achintya. It is inconceivable to the conditioned mind. Don't use your Western high intelligence to try and make some, intelligent assessment of the situation. It's incomprehensible. It's like Jiva Tattva. There comes a limit. I've listened to Gurudev many times. He'll ask questions to a certain point. Enough! Go and chant Hare Krishna for 10 years and then you might begin to understand something of this concept. Let me just paint the picture. Let me put the structure down. And then it's up to you to go into the structure. I can give some things that I've heard and understand. But certainly if you ask me something right out there, I'm not going to be able to answer it. What? Oh, God. What?
About Guru in the heart,
Yes.
what I had understood by reading Prabhupada's books, it's that Guru is helping us to listen to Chitta Guru.
No, Guru is Chaitya Guru. Guru becomes like Chaitya. Yes, if you take firmly to the lotus feet of your Guru Maharaj, he will be inspiring totally your direction. Chaitya Guru will no longer have a service because Sri Guru, he is acting in exactly the same capacity. What is the experience of Chaitya Guru? Chaitya Guru. He will inspire you in a certain direction. He will indicate something to you. Now, Gurudev is doing that. Now, Gurudev is doing that entirely. He has taken full responsibility for our souls to reach the highest degree of affection for Radha and Krishna. But when he leaves this world, unless that impression you received from your Guru was very thick and strong, unless that nishta was really firm, then again, Paramatma can advent out of Krishna's compassion. If you start to lose it, if you lose some potency after 10 years and don't take any other shelter, then again, Paramatma must come in to guide like that.
I remember an instance of a devotee who had a dream when Buddha was on the planet and told Gurudev, and he said, I am here, you ask me why you listen to your dream. Because he was living at that time.
Yeah.
So what I understand is when Guru is there, we take direct instruction from him, and slowly we listen to hear also him from the heart, and when he's not there physically, then he's really there in our heart.
But there's a danger here. If you start to think of the importance of Paramatma, some devotees, I'll come back to your question in a minute, is it okay? Can I hold? Some devotees think that you need to have first realization of Brahman, and then you have realization of Paramatma, and then you have realization of Bhagavan. Totally bogus. Completely incorrect. Personally, I went to Srila Gurudev one time, and I asked him, I said, Gurudev, do I need Paramatma realization before I can progress? He became so animated, he jumped off his bed, he grabbed my shoulders, he shook me, he said, never! So strong. We are not searching for Paramatma realization at all. That will lead us to the Sufis, that will lead us to the Christian mystics, it will lead us to a place of that type of mentality. Actually not even, that's even lower, but it'll lead us to a yogic state of consciousness. We don't want this. Understand these stages, like if you have Brahman realization, it's wonderful, it's fantastic. You can see all bright, and you're feeling ecstasy and bubbling, and you're liberated, and so many, no more suffering. It's such a dangerous place to go. That's why, like these New Age type people, or people who are following these paths, it's so tragic. Like the Buddhists, for example, it's so tragic. The Buddhists are the most tragic because what they do, they actually annihilate the Swarup totally. They totally crush any existence or any individuality of the personal soul. They crush it to death. That there's nothing. Gurudev describes like if you cook seeds in a frying pan, if you have seeds and you put them in a frying pan and fry them, the seed can never ever germinate. So if you go into that realm of nirvana or these places like the Brahmajyoti, it'll never ever again fructify. The seed of your Swarup is cooked, Gurudev says, eternally. But there is one concession amongst all this, because Krishna is so merciful, even to those and Yes, that's correct. Or from the dust of the lotus feet of Narada Muni or Parvata Muni or one of the great rishis coming through the Brahmajyoti by the mercy of contact or close proximity to them, then again that jiva, some spark can manifest that he'll come down here, because what he has to learn principally, which we've been talking about for 14 days, is relationship. It's the relationship that carries us out of the impersonal world. So we have mother and father, we will learn to love, we have cat and dog, or everything, whatever we love. But there's a you know what religio means? Religion. If you break it down, the etymology, religio. What does religio mean? It means a relationship. Yes, that's what it means. Religion fundamentally means relationship. So without relationship, you get stuck in these void places.
So all these different destinations, there's a possibility to fall from, but the only place you can't fall from is Vrindavan.
When you get into Vaikuntha, you cannot fall. When you get across the Viraja river, you can't fall. Those Gyanis who reach the Brahmajyoti, they haven't crossed the river. Mahavishnu is lying in the Viraja river. It's described that he's rolling about in these huge, giant waves of effulgence, is how it's described. He's in a palace there. And if you cross that ocean, you can never come back. And if you go to Siddhaloka, if that's your Swarup, if that's your destiny, then you stay there eternally. Yes, eternally.
I thought you said it's possible for you
No,
to come back.
I'm talking about those who merge into the Brahmajyoti. No, the Gyanis. I wasn't talking about the yogis. The yogis are fixed.
They can never come back.
No, the yogis, they go into Siddhaloka. That is a spiritual realm. That spiritual means eternal.
So that's their Swarup.
That is their Swarup. They're very happy there. Thank you very much. Don't try and show me anywhere else. I'm comfortable here. We can understand that, just like the Sakas, for example. If they heard about the pastimes of the Manjaris, they're not even interested. They are so self-satisfied in their own, moods towards Krishna. They don't want any. These yogis are utterly satiated in their practices, totally happy to sit in that Siddhaloka. Those residents of Vaikuntha, we read in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, totally satisfied. They don't want to play flutes and dance around dressed up as forest dwellers and things like that. They don't get a taste for it. It doesn't turn them on. They want to stay in that world. Mother Yashoda, if she hears about the gopis, she's not attracted at all to go and perform those pastimes with her Lala. Her Lala is her Lala, her baby, Huh? Haha, I asked Gurudev the same question too. Uddhava, he goes there and he witnesses the gopis' extraordinary praying for Krishna. But he realizes that he can never ever attain that, because Uddhava by nature is a Jnani Bhakta. Jnani, not in the sense that I'm talking about the Jnanis here, is quite different. Like Bhishma Dev, he's not a Jnani, he's a Jnani Bhakta. We have the word Bhakta on the end of it, completely different. A Jnani Bhakta is a Bhakta of Krishna first, and he understands through his intelligence the Aishwarya of the Lord. Uddhava understood the greatness of the Lord. He came into Vrindavan, he was trying to tell Nanda Baba and Yashoda, why are you crying? Or he was seeing their tears. He didn't know actually what to tell them. He saw them like weeping, and he thought, wow, this is so wonderful that you can weep for Krishna. and he was trying to pacify him. But, you know, it was just irritating to Nanda Baba because he was preaching Aishwarya. So that's his swarup, that's his nature. He's coming from, but he was allowed by Krishna's mercy, a very exceptional case here. When we're trying to discuss a whole broad picture, don't bring in the exceptions because it just, you know, bogs it all up. But it's okay. But still understand Uddhava, he didn't move, he didn't shift out of that. He wanted to take birth as a blade of grass in Kusum Sarovar, just to receive the dust of the mercy of the gopis. He appreciated that, but he didn't go there. It's just like Lakshmi Devi is still sitting over there in Bailbar. She hasn't come here. You know, their swarup is not, you know, mature, it's not in the same place. Okay, now let me talk. I said questions, but unless I give you the picture, you're going to miss something, and time's going to suddenly come, and I won't have completed, and then you'll think later on, why didn't he tell us this? Why didn't he tell us that? You know, I have to finish. So we have the jnanis, we have the yogis, and now of course we have the bhaktas. The bhaktas from the beginning are worshipping a form, and they're worshipping it through their understanding of knowledge, and through those two shaktis, the Sandhini and the Samvit Shakti. They're already like the Sandhini, you can say, or Sat, they have the body. The Swarup of the Jiva is there. So they have the existence aspect. They're not trying to annihilate their existence. And then they receive this Samvit from the heart of Guru. This knowledge is there in potential in the Jiva, but this knowledge is coming, it seems, in the mental quantum, it's described, in the mental faculty. It seems that Guru is giving you knowledge of the spiritual reality. You already actually have it in, what do you call, what's the word? Potential. Potential. You, in seed form, yes, bij. You have it in potential, like a seed. If you take the seed of an oak tree, it has the absolute potential to become enormous. But right now it's very, very small. So Guru is waking up that potential. This is the Bhakti Lata. He's creating the creeper for us to climb out and grow. This is what he's doing. By giving this Samvit, which is the knowledge Shakti, and then from the knowledge, it gradually manifests in the heart. It will mature into a heart's realization. And from the heart's realization of the knowledge, then sweetness will come, bliss will come, ecstasy will come, which is Ananda or Hladini. This is the process. So we can't actually begin to even move without this Samvit Shakti. This Samvit Shakti is not just like any ordinary knowledge at all. That's why we described the other day, you have to have a living Guru in front of you. When you see pure Guru, you've never seen in your experience some personality of that caliber. You might read all kinds of things, but unless you actually witness the reality, how can faith be absolutely fixed? It's like someone who talks about ghosts, for example. They've never seen a ghost. They don't really believe them because they've never actually seen one. There's some doubt there. But if you see one, all doubt goes away. Yes, I know they exist. You see Sadguru, that manifestation from the spiritual reality, you see in his eyes, just looking at you, not about anything else, just you personally. He's talking to our souls, and our souls are connecting with that through an incredible experience. Even if we're not conscious at the time of that experience, it's still making a completely indelible impression on the heart. It's starting to rise. That is called Samvit Shakti. And the casing of that glance is transcendental knowledge. This transcendental knowledge is what he can speak about, he can write about, he can explain. Because if these topics can't be fully explained, they're probably not actually real. These topics we're discussing today, they all can be explained. There's no like loose ends. It doesn't just drop you off the edge of a cliff and just say, you know, try and figure your way out from there. like many religions, they have faith, my brother, have faith, then you'll believe, have faith, you know. But they don't tell you anything about the journey or what is actually happening. You need to have knowledge. So he gives us direct knowledge, speaking to us through his book and so on, Shastra, explaining Shastra. Shastra is already there, but how much do we understand it without his torchlight? But the principal thing is that glance, is that look that he's given just to us. We've described before how Guru is utterly situated in the present moment. He never shifts for a second from the absolute present reality. That's the nature of spirit. The nature of spirit is eternality. So it never shifts. There's no past or future for spirit. It's always eternal in one particular state of consciousness. Guru is like that. Sadguru. He never shifts. So when he looks at you, for that moment, he's only looking at you. He's not conscious of anything else. And with his transcendental vision, he's seeing so deeply into us. He's seeing this, and we know he is, because we're feeling blissful, because he's actually touching our souls. So without that glance, how can you proceed? We must have the association of a Sadguru to actually reach the higher stages of bhakti. You cannot without it. As I've said before, you can get sukriti, miles of sukriti, by following Srila Prabhupada, by hearing about Srila Prabhupada. If you're not a Prabhupada disciple, if you're a Prabhupada disciple, you can get direct bhakti from Srila Prabhupada. But if you're not a direct disciple, you can never get bhakti. Bhakti herself, she's self-manifesting. What does that mean? Bhaktya sanjataye bhaktya. She's self-manifesting from the heart. That means she's already in the heart. The first chapter of Madhurya Kadambini, there's propositions by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Does bhakti manifest by good acts, by good deeds? Is that what brings on bhakti? If you perform so many good deeds and the sukriti gets thick enough, then all of a sudden Bhakti Devi is going to manifest? He says no. That means bhakti is subjected to karma. That means she is she's subservient to karma, our various acts. And then he says, is it given by Krishna? And again he says, no, if it was given by Krishna, then Krishna would be accused of being partial. Why does he give to some and not to others? So no, this is not accepted either. Finally, he establishes that bhakti can only be given by one who has bhakti, because that pure bhakta, Krishna is running behind that pure bhakta, to inspire him to actually throw all of this potency into his heart. Krishna is Bhakta Vatsal. He's always wanting to please his devotees. But that individual who is carrying the torchlight of Krishna's knowledge, only he, in proximity with us, can manifest the bhakti that is already in the heart of the jiva. And there's this verse, Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhavsa sadhana veda nitya siddhyasya bhavasya. Nitya siddhya, that means eternally perfect bhav. This eternally perfect bhav, prakritam, means potential. Prakritam iti sadhyate, it's in potential. This is how Srila Rupa Goswami explains this point. So understand, there are these three energies, and in this whole world, all kinds of different people are looking for paths to reach these three different types of energy. There are the jnanis, the yogis, and there is ultimately the bhaktas. Now, this explanation is explaining. You had a question? No. What? This explanation is explaining that nothing in existence is separate from Krishna. This is the principle of meaning of advaya jnana. So, Jiva Goswami, he himself has described this totally in his Sandarbhas. He describes it so completely that he himself raises three objections to this. Very powerful objections. He says, how can nothing be separate or different from Krishna when within the body of Krishna there is difference. There is difference between his hand, there is difference between his feet, there is difference between his head, there is difference between his stomach. These are differences in the Lord. So how can there not be difference? This is called swagat, bade. Bade means different. There are differences in the very body, swagat, Krishna's own body. There are differences. But then there's one verse in Brahma Samhita. Angyani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti pashyanti panti yanti pashyanti. What's the rest of it? Beautiful verse. I forgot it. Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti ananda chinmaya sadujvala vigrahasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. This is saying Angami, the Angas, the limbs of Krishna, they all can perform the same functions. There's no difference at all, actually, in the limbs of the Transcendental Lord. There are no differences. He can eat with his hands. You know, he can write with his toes. All his limbs are interchangeable, so to speak. I'll tell you. I think it's one of the first ones. Beg your pardon? This is called swagat bade. What I've just described is called swagat bade. You have a sloka book? Because you can look up. I'll look up for you.
That's including the Brahma Samhita verse?
I'm just about to tell you the Brahma Samhita verse. And Jnani. Maybe it's not in this. Oh, it must be. I know it is. No, it's not in this little one.
Do you hear Rash?
You look.
How does it start?
Angani. A-N-G-A. Angani. A-N-G-A-N-I. Angani. It's definitely in there. So she wants to know what number it is. Angyani. Yes, it's like a... So this verse is purifying this objection. So this means that Veda Rohita, that this objection or this difference has been purified. This objection is first called Swagat. So we're going to write 3 of these objections. The first is Swagat, that there is difference in Krishna's own body. And this verse from Brahma Samhita purifies that objection. Now the second objection is Sajat Bade. The first is Swagat, is Sajat, not Swa, Sa. Sa means with. No, it's different. Sa, did you find it? Show her, behind you. Find the number, look.
Is the Jat J-H-A-T?
J-A-T-A. Jat. Jatiya. Sajatiya. J-A-T-I-Y-A. Sajatiya. Sa means with. With. And Jat means like group or caste.
Sajatiya is the same word. That's the same word.
Sajatiya and Snigdha are not the same. Oh, yes, that verse. Sajatiya, same, yes, same. Sajatiya, of a like kind. Sajatiya. So now the objection is that there are many forms of Krishna, and they're all apparently completely different. If you suddenly saw a manifestation of Lord Nrsimhadev here, and suddenly you saw Varaha here, and then suddenly you saw Parashuram over here, and suddenly you saw Baladev over here. I mean, what is the similarity? They're utterly, their pastimes, the bhavs that they're expressing, everything is totally different. So now this is an objection by Jiva Goswami. He's preempting people making objections to the fact that there perhaps is something that is different from Krishna. So he's making these objections himself to purify them before a scholar brings them up and confuses everybody. So, how to reconcile this? Very beautifully and simply. He's describing how the moon has 16 stages, but actually the moon is always one, but it only shows certain aspects of itself. You can have a half moon, quarter moon, 3/4 of moon, etc. All different stages of the moon. There's 16 stages of the moon, and they're all just presenting a different idea of the full moon, but they all actually are the full moon. So all of these avatars of Krishna, ultimately they are all Brajendranandan Sri Krishna. He is Swayam Bhagavan. He is the principle. So all are actually Brajendranandan Krishna. And then the verse describing this is Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. This, you can look up this in your Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anandam Rupam. You can see what was the number of that Angani? What is it? 32. 532. Someone have that for a second? Just a second. 532. And the next one? You look up anyway. Advaitam, Achyutam.
It's Brahma Samhita 33.
33, okay, yes. There's a whole run of them, I remember that. Yeah. If you have a Brahma Samhita, the commentary on this 33rd verse is absolutely so sweet and divine. It's really very, very, very beautiful. It's describing how Krishna manifests as the different avatars, etc. How ultimately he's only one. It's a very, very beautiful verse to read in our black Brahma Samhita that we have. It's a wonderful commentary there by Srila Gurudev. So this is how this objection is purified. So this is the second objection. Sa jatiya. It sounds like swa gat, but it's not. It's different. Swa means own. Gat means form. Sa means with, like we say sakam. That means with some desire for the fruit, like Dhruva Maharaj was performing sakam karma yoga, as opposed to nishkam karma yoga. This nish means without a fruited desire. Sa always means with. There are many other words. And it's spelled with a J. Oh, the swa is spelled with a G, and sa is spelled with a J. You should remember jat. Jat means group or caste. That caste of avatars. Sa jatiya. That's how to remember it. Like we described yesterday, Swajatiya Snigdha Ashraya. This Swajatiya, Swa, own, group. Jatiya, again, same word. So Sa Jatiya is the second objection.
Isn't it a V after the S?
He's saying swan between the two S words.
One is SVA and one is SAJ.
There must be a mistake.
Sa Jatiya and Swa Gat. These are the two words. That's it. No discussion on it.
I was looking in the sloka book.
Uh-huh.
A V after the A, after the S.
Swa Jatiya. It's saying Swa Jatiya. But in the Brahma Samhita it says Sa Jatiya. Sa Jatiya, not Swa. Anyway, I'm not always right. Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think I am. I'll have to check it. I think this is correct. Third, huh?
We're following Srila Rupa Goswami, so he says Swajati. Rupa Goswami.
He says what?
Swajatiya,
Swajatiya. Not Sajatiya. Swajatiya.
Swaja. Without I'm listening to you.
Okay, in the
But what I
Brahma
read,
Samhita I'm reading Sajati.
but what I read, it's Sajati.
Sajati.
Yes.
Yeah. Perhaps they are interchangeable. I will check and tell you tomorrow morning. Okay, so Sva or Sa Jatiya. Sa means with, Swa means own. Okay, have I confused you enough? Hang on, we haven't finished yet. We're going to really confuse you in a minute. Really confuse you. Okay. The third objection is V. Jatiya. V-I. This has no S on it. V-I, Jatiya. This means those objects that appear to be in direct opposition to Krishna, such as the Jiva or Maya. These seem to be completely different to Krishna, the Jiva and Maya. This is called Vijatiya. V-I-J-A-T-I-Y-A. Vijatiya. It seems that they're in direct opposition to Krishna, the Jiva and Maya. But it's described that if these objects are coming from the same source, then ultimately they're no different, because they're coming from the same source. They do become different, or the Jiva does become different when he tries to enjoy separately from Krishna, because it's not his swadharma. This is when it becomes in opposition. But this opposition is only temporary until it becomes purified, sooner than later, we hope. So this, the description is two things from the same source, and they do not interfere with each other. How is there a difference? If the Jiva and Maya are under Krishna's control at every minute, how can there be any difference from him? If the Jiva and Maya are always under Krishna's control, ultimately, how can there be any difference between the Jiva and Maya and Krishna? And then it's described that the only conflict comes when the Jiva desires to enjoy separately, because that's against his nature. That's something that is not natural, and therefore it creates a difference, but it is only a temporary difference, we hope. Okay, those are the three principal objections. But most of this, and it's exactly 9:30, so most of what I wanted to describe to you is about these three energies and how they affect Maya, and how, like this chart, it's very clear. You have the spiritual reality and how that is being influenced by these three energies. And then you have the Jiva Shakti. The Jiva Shakti is manifesting from Tatastha Shakti, and it manifests as the Jiva's own form. And the Chit, the knowledge potency in relationship to the Jiva, it manifests as Brahma Gyan, which means knowledge of the Brahman. And the bliss of Brahman is called Brahmanand. And the Sat Shakti in Jiva Tattva is the Jiva's minute spiritual form. It has existence, so it's Sat. And the knowledge is knowledge of Brahman. Of course, we can have knowledge of Krishna, we can go higher than that, but still the essential knowledge that is there. And then in Maya Shakti, this is called Bahiranga, or external. And this Chit Shakti is manifesting as Bautik Gyan, or mundane knowledge. And then the coming from the Sat is all these material worlds. They all have existence, even though they're temporary, but they still have existence. So they come under the heading of the Sat Shakti. They're manifested, they have form, they have existence, so they're under the Sat. And then I described the other day how the bliss within this Maya Shakti is called Jad Ananda, dull pleasure or dead pleasure. You know, usually I've heard maybe 3 or 4 times Gurudev describe this tattva. in Baja. And I can remember almost every day, the next day, he apologizes to the devotees for making them work so hard with their brains, trying to understand this. He says, oh, I made you work so hard yesterday. There was no rasa, no juice, nothing. Just all shut this, different terminologies, etc. Trying to understand Krishna. So I should also apologize for making you. If I didn't make you work very hard, you made me work very hard. That was more how it was. Yeah. But
You said that if Jiva and Maya are always under the control of Krishna, there how can there be any difference between them?
yes.
But then if the Jiva goes away,
Yes.
then is there a difference or is it only there?
That creates a difference, but it's a very temporary difference. It's not like an eternal difference. If the jiva turns his back on Krishna, he's by nature a servant of Krishna, and it's all reconciled. But if he decides to go away from Krishna, then it becomes some difference, but it's not eternal difference. It's just a temporary difference. Okay? If you understand that you don't understand, I'm really happy. If you think you understand, if you understand the framework, that's all I'm teaching you. I'm just trying to teach you the framework. You can ask Madhusudan Maharaj on so many esoteric questions of this sort. You can ask Vishnu Daivata Maharaj about, Paramatma feature, etc., etc. Perhaps they understand or know, answers to those kind of questions. But ultimately, this topic, like Jiva Tattva, is achintya. We cannot understand it. But through time and familiarity and hearing it regularly, it's really important to regularly refresh this tattva, because it does give us a total foundation of connection with Krishna. That's what this tattva gives us, very strongly. Basically, we have to see that there is nothing in existence that is separate from Krishna. This is the essence of this, tattva. So if nothing is separate from Krishna, then what are these desires I have that want to roam away from Krishna? They're just, unwanted desires. I want to come back on track in the truthful place and see the absolute reality. It's demonstrating the absolute truth. This is called advaya. It's not dual, it's not two, it's one.
I also learned, Maharaj, that in the paratattva feature where you say it's got satin here, that there isn't full knowledge there. Full knowledge is only advaya feature. There's only partial knowledge.
Yeah, that's true. But the way it's described, if you were standing in front of Gurudev and had to speak on advaya jnana paratattva, which I've heard many devotees do, you would say that the feature of the yogi is that he experiences the chit shakti. But as Ram Prabhu is saying, that chit, of course, is only limited because you haven't knowledge of Bhagavan. Just like the Sanat Kumaras, they didn't have knowledge of Bhagavan until they smelled the fragrance from his lotus feet and the tulsis. Only then did they begin to have, an awareness of the personal form of the Lord. Prior to that, it was like a Brahmavad conception, like a yogi. It was a yogi, exactly the same as a yogi. But full-blown knowledge is what we're hearing today. Well, it's exactly like at the end of this chapter, I think it's chapter 14 in Jayavadama, Bhaktivedanta Thakur is describing these limbs, these qualities of Krishna, and at the end he's saying it's like a candle. Like the candle, this is the way I always explain it, first time, is if you have a candle, it has three energies. It has the beauty of the flame. It's sometimes brilliantly white, yellow, blue, very beautiful flame. It has quality, it has substance, it has everything. And then you have the second energy, which is heat, coming from the candle. And then you have the third energy, which is light. So you have these three energies in a candle. So the Shastras, the great rishis, they've separated these energies. And they've shown how Krishna also has these three energies, just like a candle. So God is one, the candle is one, the light, the heat, and the actual flame, they are one, yet they are different. And this is what confused Ganesh. But we're not confused. It's actually so simple. I don't know how Ganesh was confused. If you think of it in relation to a candle, of course a candle has 3 energies. But perhaps no one's ever told us directly that a candle does have 3 energies, so we don't see it as 3 energies. There's another analogy connected to the candle like this, that Krishna is the flame, and Sri Radha is the first principal energy, Swarup Shakti, and her dependence on the flame is full. She's fully dependent on the flame for her existence. So if Radha is fully dependent on Krishna, what to speak of us? How can we possibly entertain the idea that we're independent from Krishna? We'll try. Today, within the next hour, all of us will try to be independent, probably from Krishna. But when we think of Sri Radha, like the heat on the candle, is fully dependent. The flame itself is not dependent at all on the heat. If the heat decides to go away, the flame can still stay. Of course they cannot, because they're completely together, so it's a chintya. But still the example is there, that the flame is not depending on the heat for its existence, but the heat is depending on the flame totally for its existence. And so is the illumination. But the flame is not. So the flame is the only independent vastu, which is Krishna. Srila Gurudev ki jai, advaya gyan paratattva ki jai. Shri Radha Gopinath Ji ki jai, Sachinandana Gaura Hari ki jai, Ananta Gaura Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gopinath Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadhavaya Namaha Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadhavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giri Hari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gupta Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rup Shri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha Echai Goshai Kori Charana Vandana Yaha Hoite Vignanas Avista Puran Echai Goshai Jeve Muitara Dasa Tasa Bera Padare No Mora Pashadra Tadare Charana Sevi Bhakti Sanavasa O Janame Hoi Abhilas Echai Goshai Jebe Braja Koilovasa Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Kohila Prakar Ananda Bolo Hari Braja Vrindavana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pada Manjaye Mana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pada Padma Kori Ashe Nama Sankirtana Kori Narottamodasa Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda O Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Sachi-Nandan Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachi-Nandan Jaya Gaura Hari. Oh Jaya Radha, Gopinath Radha, Gopinath Radha. Oh Jaya Radhe, 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 Shri Radhe. Shrimati Radharani Vrishabhananandini Rajeshwari ki jai, Shri Radha Gopinath Chu ki jai, Satchinandana Gaur Hari ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai, Gopinath Bhavan ki jai, Vaishnavas ki jai, Gopi Vansha Kalpatarubhyas cha, Kripa Sindhuveva cha, Patitanam Papnivyo, Vaishnave Namo.